Hi everybody, this is the video for Friday's class. Today I'm going to be talking about four main subjects, I guess. I want to touch on Allport, your reading for Thursday. I want to say a few words about the notes from Bachner that you're reading for Friday. And I'll say a few things about the formal autoethnographies, one of which you have to pick from the list and read one of those for Friday as well. And then to sum up, the fourth thing, we'll talk about your own research project. So first with the Allport. Allport, obviously, in this chapter talks about in-groups. He talks about, not only defines the terms, of course, but he focuses on some kind of bigger ideas, things like how do you get into an in-group? What does being a member of an in-group mean? How do in-groups connect with one another? There's in-groups, there's out-groups, right? There's reference groups, and those kinds of things. These are all fundamental concepts, and they're really interesting, I think, to even as you consider the different in-groups that you belong to. Allport's kind of theories and definitions can help you to think about that differently, and certainly that'll be part of what you're doing for this autoethnography project. He also makes a big point about the kind of the connection between the in-group and the out-group. In the last part that you had to read for Thursday, he says that you don't have to have an out-group to help define or determine the in-group. It's helpful if you have an out-group, particularly an out-group that you're a rival with, but it's not necessary. So, for example, in the neighborhood that you grew up in, there are multiple families in that neighborhood or in that community. Each one of them is a separate in-group, right? And as you think about your own family, that's an in-group. All of those other families are out-groups. The presence of those out-groups doesn't change anything about your family. It has no determination about the way that your particular in-group works, right? And so that's really important. Multiple in-groups could exist at the same place, or really an in-group and multiple out-groups could exist in the same area, and there's no conflict, there's no problem between them. Having said that, when you do have an out-group, that can solidify in-group membership. Think about the rivalry between State and Carolina. At NC State, we are an in-group. We have our own history, our own traditions, our own values, those kinds of things. We don't care about Carolina. The existence or the presence of UNC has no bearing on our in-group and what we do. But when we play Carolina in football or basketball or whatever, and suddenly we have a kind of a rivalry or an enmity with that out group, then it solidifies our in-group membership. We are never more NC State, right, than when we're playing against Carolina. And so, do we need them? No. But when they're around, it helps to intensify the in-group bonds. And I think that's a really important concept. And then one other point about Allport is and I mentioned this in the other video. He provides the example of the guy who lists out all of his different in-groups. That's an important example because you can see all of the different groups that he's part of. But you can go further with it, and I think this will be helpful for you when you're thinking about the particular group that you're going to choose to write about for your research project. So, for example, like if you're a child, right? A male child, a female child. Those are important differences. And so it's one thing to be the child of a family. Your gender it makes that different too. If you don't conform to one of those genders, that makes it different still. If you're a skateboarder, right? You're part of the skateboard in-group. If you play video games, you're part of the video game player in-group. Male video player in-group might operate a little bit differently from the female video game player in-group. That's something to think about as well. So the clubs that you're in, the activities that you take part in, your hobbies, your interests, all of those come with a kind of an in-group. And it doesn't matter if your in-group or the in-group that you think about isn't like you don't think that it's academic or serious enough. you're going to treat it academically. You're going to treat it seriously. You'll be able to write about it. I guarantee it. And if it's a bad in group, I'll tell you that when you, or a bad choice, not a bad in group, I'll tell you that when you submit your topic description. So please, sometime in the next few days, make a list of all of the different in groups that you're part of, and you'll be amazed, I think. Next on my list has to do with Bachner and the little notes that you were reading for today. So Bachner, he thinks that social science writing can be too dry, too scientific, too objective to really give people an insight about in-group membership, or at least membership in some in-groups. And so he proposes this other kind of social science writing called an autoethnography, which is, as I said in yesterday's video, it is a social science genre, but it's right on the edge of the humanities. And so we're dealing with with people's emotions, what they think it means to be part of an in-group, what the value is of an in-group or of being in it. He goes on to point out 5 key features, or 5 distinctive features of in-groups. I encourage you to pay very close attention to them. Autoethnography, or I said 5 key features of in-groups. I really mean 5 key features of autoethnographies. They're typically in the first person. They typically deal with one person's experiences over time, that is, one person's in-group experience over time. Frequently, there will be a narrative component. It's not a dry academic kind of paper. Frequently, the writer is telling a story and then bringing in discussion and analysis and outside research along the way. Frequently, the step number 4 is that the autoethnography will include emotion. It's not just what happened, but it's how you felt about what happened, or how it made you feel, which is really important. And then typically you'll see a kind of a chronological structure, how that in-group experience changes or evolves over time. So when you're reading one of those formal autoethnographies for Friday's class, please be sure to keep those 5 ideas in mind. Pay attention to that. They're really fundamental to the purpose and point of those papers. And you'll see that regardless of which one of those formal autoethnographies you pick, you'll see that they're very emotional, that they deal with some uncomfortable situations, but it's not just a story. There's a deeper perspective there about what it means to be part of that in-group. And that's ultimately what the paper's about, and you'll hear more about this in the next video. The last thing I want to say in the video today has to do with your own research project. For Friday, you're supposed to read the research project overview as well as the assignment prompts for papers 3 and 4. This is one big project that includes 3 parts: a topic description, and then papers 3 and 4. This is an autoethnography project, so you will be deciding which in-group you want to focus on. You'll be doing some research about this kind of group, and you'll be surprised. You'll find some good information out there. And then you'll be writing a bit about your own experiences. And then finally, you'll be wedding that stuff together in paper number 4 in the autoethnography. And this is looking ahead a little bit, but I have a good handful of student autoethnographies on the website as well. And you can take a look at some of those papers to get a sense for, kind of what you can do with yours. And as I said at the end of yesterday's video, it's a really interesting assignment. You get to focus on some aspect of your life and think more deeply about it, examine it closely, and then write about it. And I think that you'll find that that's a really kind of interesting and fulfilling thing to do. The last thing I want to say today is that as you are thinking about the different in-groups that you belong to and the one that you ultimately want to select for your focus in this project, you'd want to do a little bit of preliminary research. This isn't necessarily about finding sources or collecting sources. It's really just making sure, on the one hand, that the sources exist. If you pick some in group that, like for example, if you picked the COVID-19 in group or the students displaced by the coronavirus in group, I can guarantee you that that's not going to work. No scholars have written about that yet because it's too new. The research hasn't been done, those papers haven't been written. You'll have to pick something that's a little less new, a little less timely than that. So, one, make sure that the sources exist. And two, through this initial phase of the research, you're also educating yourself a little bit. Trying to see, well, how do scholars look at this group? What kind of terminology do they use? Are there some other ideas about this group that you haven't thought of before? Maybe you'll recognize, or maybe you'll learn rather, the name of certain experts who do a lot of writing and research about your particular group. Hang on to that because that's going to be good for you later on. You'll initially do this research through Summon, in the NCSU Library's website, obviously. And then we'll also be looking at some more specific databases related to the social sciences, and I'll show you more about that later on. All right, that's all for now. Bye.